Welcome to Let's Talk. This is August 16th, 2018. So today's topic is, it is called Apa-grantha. Apa-grantha means unauthorized books or false literature. And this Apa-grantha pertains to a number of books that have been written over the last, let's say, century and a half, which have been written and attributed to sometimes an almost anonymous source, and other times to a specific person, when in fact these books were created as to be some sort of evidence for undoing the position, the philosophy, the Siddhanta of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas in the line of Sri Rupa Goswami. And as it comes down then into the time of more contemporary acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and up to the time of Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti-siddhanta and so forth. So we're going to discuss, or at least mention, some of these books which have made their way to the Western world, are in print today, and are available on some of the common Hare Krishna online services where you can order devotional paraphernalia, clothing, various books, etc. Now, you might mention, Giri, because I forget on which sites some of these books are available, but we don't necessarily have to mention the sites that they're on. But some of these books, which are known as Apa-granthas, and this word, Apa-grantha, is used by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our Param Gurudev. And so he's mentioned he's mentioned these books. Now I might mention one or two things about what's in these books. So Gary, let me turn it over to you first. And as you mentioned them, we have a new technology we're employing today. Instead of holding up a book and showing it like we've been doing previously, we have now learned how to put that on the screen in a more in a more user-friendly way. All right, so if you want to say something there about this list, Bhakti-siddhanta, and then as you mentioned them, I'll put them on the screen. So maybe mention the whole list quickly, and then we'll go back through the list, and you'll mention this one, and I'll put it on the screen.
Right.
Then I'll say the next one and everything, because you can't see me putting it on the screen. Right?
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead, Giri. Haribol.
So in his introduction to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he writes about these Apa-granthas, and he says, there are several other new books, or books that were written a little later, such as Jayananda's Chaitanya Mangal, Govindadas's Kadacha, Vamsi Shiksha, Advaita-prakash, and Nityananda Vamsa Vistara. Although it is said that these books are old, we have no interest in them. They are distinct in the way that they are incorrect in their philosophical truths and conclusions. Their narrow-minded, evil intentions are obvious and highly noticeable due to the absence of any effort and proper teachings in them. Chaitanya Charitamrita is said to be the original book, and these Apa-granthas are not recognized. So that's the place where he mentions the names of some of these Apa-granthas.
Now, read that section again where he says evil intent, etc., etc.
Yeah. He says they are distinct in the way that they are incorrect in their philosophical truths and conclusions. Their narrow-minded evil intentions are obvious and highly noticeable due to the absence of any effort and proper teachings in them.
All right, so one could extract from this. The beginning of that statement again?
They are distinct in the way that they are incorrect in their philosophical truths and conclusions.
Okay, philosophical truths. Okay. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta has pointed out this list of books. I'll have you read it again.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the defect of these books is that they are incorrect in their philosophical conclusions, okay, in their teaching. I've actually run across devotees in the past several decades who said, well, we're not into the philosophy, we're just into the kirtan, This was a group of devotees that I encountered on the island of Maui in Hawaii. They weren't interested in lectures. They weren't interested in philosophy. They were only interested in kirtan. Similarly, in a more recent time, in the last few years, over the proper siddhanta of the origin of the jiva, ourselves, where do living entities come from? One of those, it's a classic question, isn't it? You find it out there in the world, the question of humanity. Where do we come from? Is there life after death? These are the questions that have been around since humans been able to talk. Not just
existentialism,
Yeah, not just in India, but all over the world.
Yeah.
You see? So one would think, well, if you have a question, having the proper answer, that might be helpful. And if you have a question and having the wrong answer, well, number one, it's certainly not helpful, and it might be detrimental. So, I've even heard contemporary followers of Srila Prabhupada, even of Srila Sridhara Maharaj say, oh, what does it matter? You fell from the spiritual world, or you didn't fell from the spiritual world. What does it matter?
We're here now.
Let's just forget that, let's just go on spreading Krishna consciousness. It's like, spreading Krishna consciousness devoid of proper siddhanta equals, crippled Krishna consciousness. Some defect is there. And the higher you go, the closer the observation. For an example, you're a devotee in the beginning. There's 3 modes of material nature, or there's 5 modes of material nature. It really doesn't matter, right? That's such a small thing. However, as you go forward, it would be expected that you would understand the 3 modes of material nature, not 5. Right. There are 3, and their interactions and their mixing and all these things. There are 9 processes of devotional service, 9 islands of Navadvip, etc. So one might, in the beginning, have a misunderstanding, but that should be corrected going forward. And at a certain level, the magnifying glass is really on, and you get into what's called rasabhas, not just a particular point of sambandha gyan. It actually gets into rasabhas. And there it has to be exactly perfect, or it's abhas. It's not acceptable.
It's not real. It's a shadow.
It's not real. It's only a shadow. And so we say, well, does it matter? Well, it happens to matter a lot. Lord Chaitanya was very particular. That's why Swarup Damodar, he reviewed everything that came before the Lord, because any little tinge of rasabhas would create a huge disturbance in the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it was Swarup Damodar was so it was so important, and he was so critical, you might say, that he found defects in various things. There's one incident, now I'm not recalling it perfectly, but there was a poem that someone wanted to read to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I think it might even have been a poem about Lord Jagannath.
Yes, it was.
And all the devotees, the Lord's eternal associates, these devotees, pure devotees of the Lord, they were, the Lord is, this is a wonderful, this is such a wonderful poem. But when it came to Swarup Damodar, he booted that poem out, and he would not allow that poem to be read to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The poet had said that Jagannath's form is made of wood, and Swarup Damodar said, no, it's Sachidananda. You cannot say that Jagannath is just wood.
Yes. So, but this little point just slipped by so many devotees because so much other aspect of the poem was probably quite palatable and actually in that mood which characterizes a lot of the classic Gaudiya sentiments, especially back in the day, the Ras Kirtans and all these things.
Sweetness.
The sweetness, which you really find in Chaitanya Bhagavat, compared to Chaitanya Charitamrita. Someone might even say, well, Chaitanya Charitamrita is quite dry in comparison. Yes, it is. But Chaitanya Charitamrita is a far more important book. So some of these these Apa-granthas, we're going to put one of them up on the screen here. Let me put this one up on the screen here first. Where is it? It's called the Advaita-prakash. Okay, I'm going to pop this up. And there it is. This book, the Advaita-prakash, Gary, they can see this on my side of the screen now. This Advaita-prakash is purportedly, Sri Ishan Nagara. And I believe in the introduction it says that this Ishan Prabhu, this Sri Ishana, was the household servant of Advaita Acharya. And the whole book is written in that sweet mood of Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's just sweet. It's like the juice left over from the rasgullas or the juice from the what's that called? Anyway, I forget that other sweet that's all sugary water. It's just sweet, sweet, maduram, maduram, maduram. But in this, and therefore, it's attractive to the Gaudiyas. It's really sweet, sweet, sweet. But in it are several key things that when they slip by and then you accept this book as bona fide, you just undone your whole worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there's a part of the conversation in here where Achyutananda, the son of Advaita-acharya, he asked Advaita-acharya, what is that mantra for worshiping Gauranga? And Advaita says, there's no special mantra for worshiping Gauranga. He is Krishna himself. And the Krishna Mula mantra, the word is all that is necessary. So, let me remove that here for a second. So when you accept this book, you accept what's in it, and there's no mantra for worshiping Mahaprabhu. So what is that Gayatri mantra that all you Gaudiyas are out there chanting? Aing Shri Gurave Namaha.
Klim Gauraya Namaha. Klim Gauraya Namaha.
Yeah, Klim Gauraya Namaha. Sorry, that was wrong mantra. So what is that? That's out the window. And not only does that go out the window, but the worship of the deity of Mahaprabhu goes out the window along with it. Because if you have a deity, you have to have a corresponding mantra. And if you have no special mantra for Mahaprabhu, guess what? You don't have a deity of Mahaprabhu anymore. It's not that you have a deity and no mantra. The two they're inseparable.
Yeah, it's synonymous. Yeah,
synonymous, the deity and the mantra. So it's a very small point. It's 200 pages with mainly one thing, just to cut what? The root of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Right.
To cut at the root. It's just like you can lose an arm, you can lose a leg, but there's a little thing that runs from the top of our heads down to our spine inside the backbone. The physiognomy of the biology of the human body. It's such a small little nerve. Snip that and you're over. You're done. You can't move, can't talk, can't think, can't see, can't nothing. It's the root. You snip that and it's gone. Or like the heart, you can take so many things, but no heart, no life. End of story. You can be alive without a brain. Not without a heart, you see. You can live without a kidney for some time, or this or that. But certain organs are quintessential to existence. So this mantra that we have in Gayatri, this is quintessential to the worship of Mahaprabhu. Others have defended this in the past. I think we mentioned that in the Krishna talk sometime back, this Todaram Das Baba. You see, and he defended the mantra for worshiping Gauranga. and he gave support from Vedic literature, etc., and supported that. Well, this Advaita-prakash, which is for sale in almost all the bookstores in Loi Bazaar, in years in the past, I know for a fact it was for sale in the Krishna Balaram bookstore at ISKCON in Vrindavan. It's for sale, I think it's on the Krishna
Culture, yeah.
Krishna Culture, one of those other bookstore online services where devotees go to buy various paraphernalias and things. And there is this book, which is listed as an Apa-grantha. And it's not that there's just this one little thing. There are many things in that book, but that's one of the more important ones.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts right at the root of our worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our parampara. So, but this brings us to a point that we've covered before, that for the most part in the Western Hare Krishna movement, Srila Bhakti-siddhanta is a picture. That's it. It's just a picture on the altar. And, this has become a problem in any number of ways. And particularly this list of unauthorized books. Some of these books have now made their way onto the shelves and the private and temple libraries and bookstores and what have you, all around the world, particularly in the English language, and that means for the Western sector. And devotees read them and pass them on to someone and go, "Oh, Prabhu, this is nectar."
Yeah.
The nectar. They, fooled by the sweetness, you see. Fooled by the sweetness. This is nectar, so sweet. And if anything, I would say the only thing that helps or saves most of the devotees is they don't digest what they read anyway. It's like Lord Shiva holding the poison in his throat. He didn't swallow it.
Right.
He held it in his throat. His throat turned blue, though, because of that. So I say that, yeah, it's like babies. Any of you mothers out there who have raised children know that you feed the babies, right? And when they start eating solid or semi-solid food, and you put a little spoonful of something in the mouth, and the baby spits it right back out. He hasn't learned to swallow yet, so it's a real messy affair. All right. So a lot of times devotees read literature, bona fide or unbona fide, and they don't digest it. They don't actually take it in. They're like licking around the edges of the book. Oh, it's so sweet, or this is so far out, or whatever. And they don't really ingest it. However, if you're reading this book, Advaita-prakash, and you ingest this and are conscious about accepting what's being said there, then you just cut the root of your own sampradaya. Simple as that. So these books are to be rejected. They're not to be in libraries. They shouldn't be on bookshelves. Or you might have one in your reference library, like we do in our reference library. Not for reading, not for the culture of bhakti, but for understanding what's been done and said against our sampradaya and to what extent. And as you know, I've done a lot of independent, extensive research in Christianity, and oh my God, are they ever full of this stuff? Invented books, changing the original books. That's a classic. I mean, the Bible today doesn't even vaguely resemble a Bible from 500 years ago. It's absolutely incredible. The amount of changes, the amount of additions, and all this stuff that's happened. The Vatican has over 2,000 different editions of the Bible.
Plus over 200 Gospels, each one from a different sect of Christianity.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we see now the same thing. It's been happening, and we see it even happening more in the Western world today as we're now faced with. I'm reading something from one of Prabhupada's books a few months ago. I ordered a set of Bhagavatams, and I go, I don't remember it like this. This sounds different. I was like, what's going on here? And they go, oh, Maharaj, those are the changed books. And I'm going, what do you mean the changed books? I was really behind the curve on that. I didn't grasp that until about 2 years ago. And I'm going, what? What do you mean the changed books. Right? So big issue today, the changed books. The changed books are there on the shelf in the store. The bogus literature like this
Advaita-prakash.
Advaita-prakash. What was the other one, Giri? What was it called? Nityananda Charitra?
Yeah, Nityananda Charitamrita.
Nityananda-
That's not actually mentioned by Bhakti-siddhanta, but it's not. The point is, it's not mentioned by anybody. That's the problem.
Yes, it's not. Bhaktisiddhanta has not put this book, Nityananda Charitamrita, on the shelf. He has not put it on the shelf or in the dustbin of Apa-granthas. However, neither he nor Bhaktivinoda, any acharya, going all the way back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda in our line, any acharya has ever mentioned this book. So where do people get off today thinking, 500 years of our acharyas, they overlooked this. I look at it, this is so sweet, so much nectar. Let's put this one out there. Let's sell this. And not only do the devotees read it, but and I've seen this book on book tables by independent, mainstream Hare Krishna groups. In other words, outside of ISKCON, I've seen this book being distributed and being read by the devotees. So
there's a bit of a history with that Nityananda Charitamrita. Should I just mention a few points?
Let me put that cover back up here for a minute and go ahead and tell us some of the history.
Yeah. Well, we did some research into this Nityananda Charitamrita a couple of years ago, and I discovered that the original book was published from the ashram at the birthplace of Ishwara Puri, which is run by the Babajis in the line of the Nityananda Vamsa, which, surprise, surprise, the Nityananda Vamsa, Nityananda Charitamrita, and they're also affiliated to the Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam group. So this is where it's coming from. It's coming from that particular group. So we went to the Vrindavan Research Institute some years ago, and we were asking about a list of all the books written by Vrindavan Das Thakur, because it's purportedly written by him. And they had a list of all the books of Vrindavan Das Thakur, and this Nityananda Charitamrita is not mentioned in any list of the books of Vrindavan Das. And the publisher of the English version, he was told of the authenticity of Nityananda Charitamrita by Dr. Kapoor, who later became a follower of the Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam group.
Yeah, this is another whole bewilderment. I mean, I knew Dr. Kapoor passed on quite a few years ago. Dr. Kapoor, I had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Kapoor quite well. But, with all due respect, but Dr. Kapoor was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. His name was Adi Keshava Das. He was also a close friend of Srila Prabhupada for many years in the past. And then when Prabhupada came and preached in Vrindavan, brought the devotees there for the first time, and Dr. Kapoor and him met in the courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple, and they hadn't met in over 30 years. Srila Prabhupada requested Jayadvaita Maharaj, at the time Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, to include articles by Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor in Back to Godhead, and informed Jayadvaita Swami at that time, Brahmachari, that this will improve the quality of your magazine. However, by the end of everything, Dr. Kapoor was a mixed bag. And by that I mean that basically with the breakup of Gaudiya Mutt, he ended up not with one of the fractions of the Gaudiya Mutt, or even with Srila Prabhupada, but he ended up being significantly influenced by the Babaji section. And I know Western devotees that he took personally to Radhakund to accept Siddha Pranali from the anti-Gaudiya section at Radhakund, to accept Siddha Pranali initiation. I personally know a sannyasi who was duped in that way. So, Dr. Kapoor was, with all due respect, he was a mixed bag. Once Dr. Kapoor gave me his book called Braj Ke and originally it was in Hindi. It was about all these devotees in Vrindavan. And then it had been translated, I forget who translated it for him, into English, and so he presented me a copy. And I looked through it, and I read several chapters, and I skimmed through a whole bunch more. And the next time I met Dr. Kapoor, he used to come over to my ashram all the time in Vrindavan in those days. That was the late 1980s for Prasadam. And this is right, 1988, 1989. And he said, Maharaj, how you enjoy the book? And I said, Dr. Kapoor, with all due respect, I don't accept this. And he said, why? I said, all these stories, they have the same patter. Patter means in magician circles, the speech, the rap that the magician's doing while he's distracting you with his words is called his patter. I said, it's the same in all these stories. This Bubba, this cowherd man, this cowherd woman in the Braj, they were churning yogurt and singing Krishna, Krishna, Govinda, Govinda. And little Lord Krishna comes up and puts his hands, over their eyes from behind them and all this stuff. And I said, I don't accept this. He goes, no, Maharaj, these things actually happened. I said, no, I don't think so. I don't accept this. Mm-hmm. And I saw him, and I think he did a second version, and he just had everybody coming in his office. I go over to see him in his place down next to the Radha Gokulananda temple, and there'd just be all these people in there, and there'd be no barricade, and they just tell some story from out in the Braj that there was a lady, there was a saint, a cowherd boy, a cowherd man, a well, this, that, somebody with a water pot. And Krishna was just appearing in every one of these stories. Mm-hmm. And sometimes leaving his footprints on the ground and all this stuff. And I said, Dr. Kapoor, I would say that my Guru Maharaj was as much a Braj Bhakt as any of these people that you've mentioned in this book. And we never found such things in relation to our Guru Maharaj. There are a couple of stories that have floated around out there, which are usually if you read the stories that have been recorded by, Gopal Ghosh, another very good friend of mine in Vrindavan before he passed away. But when he would talk about Prabhupada, the Sahaji influence was just overbearing. I mean, it was intolerable, He talks about seeing Srila Prabhupada sitting by the Rupa Goswami Samadhi crying, oh Rupa, going on.
Rolling on the ground.
Rolling on the ground. It's just like, no, that was not Srila Prabhupada. Either in his private life, in his public life, when we knew him, or at any time before. Nor are these the real symptoms that one should look for when trying to discover where has love of God manifest. In whose heart does love of God reside, you see. These are the imitations. Yes, such things are mentions and such things may and do occur. But the way they attribute some of these things to Srila Prabhupada and to all these people in the village, it's really a disservice. Mm-hmm. But then you have, because, it's wound up also with, the sweetness and sometimes even the correct philosophy. You see, devotees are easily misled by these things. Right. So we have this, what was the first one? Advaita-prakash. Then the Nityananda, Charitamrita. Mm-hmm. Do we have any others that we were going to show copies of? I don't think so.
No. There's another list that was given in an article written during the time of Bhakti-siddhanta in the Gaudiya magazine. He mentions Advaita-prakash again. He mentions another book called Advaita-mangal, Advaita-vilas, Nityananda Vamsamala, Nityananda Vamsadhisthara, Bhaktamala, which is very, very popular in North India with the Ramanandis and the Hindi speakers. It's a Hindi book.
Okay, now here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. These two books that we've shown, wasn't there's another one? It's not a forbidden book, but not an Apa-grantha, but there's also a list of books which Srila Bhakti-siddhanta did not and did not allow his disciples to read. Mm-hmm. Now, who were his disciples? They weren't a bunch of wayward hippies from New York and San Francisco. We're talking about Srila Prabhupada, Srila Puri Maharaj, Srila Sridhara Maharaj, Srila Keshav Maharaj, Srila Madha Maharaj, Ujjvala Maharaj, and a whole bunch of others. And none of them, our Prabhupada included, were supposed to be reading these books. These are the bona fide books, but on the very higher subject. And so the Gaudiya Mutt did not give much attention to publishing these books, although they were written by Goswamis or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Narottam Das or whoever they might have been written by, Rupa Goswami particularly. They did not give, that Brihat Mridanga, that printing press, didn't roll and produce these books and then make it out into the book tables and the bookstores and all of these things. So what's happened in the modern time is devotees, and I know them by name, but I'm not going to mention them, some in ISKCON, some out of ISKCON, they look around, they go, oh, well, here's like Ujjvala-nilamani. Well, Prabhupada, Bhakti, Gaudiya Mutt didn't publish this. This is by Rupa Goswami. I'll publish this. As if, they think that this is, like, there was something, Bhaktisiddhanta didn't leave a stone or a leaf unturned. He examined everything.
So in other words, you mean to say that what they're thinking is, well, Bhaktisiddhanta never published it, so we should publish it because obviously he forgot about it.
Well, not that he forgot about it, but, they just didn't get around to it. And in other words, we should publish all the Gaudiya literatures, and we're doing a service by translating this from the Bengali or the Sanskrit, and then publishing this. This is going on within the Mula Mutt here in the West. The Mula Mutt means the original Mutt would be ISKCON. Sannyasis and gurus in ISKCON have spent the time and energy to translate these books, then publish them, and there they are out in the bookstores for devotees to read. But we have quotes from Srila Sridhara Maharaj, from our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and other sources, maybe even from Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta, that these books are first and foremost, they are not for the average devotee. Put that in another context. They are only for the most advanced devotees. And in order to say, and what happens if the neophyte, even Madhyamadikari devotee goes to these literatures? Well, do they get the benefit of these literatures? No, because they're not at that platform. But what they do get is the residue, which can then eventually become prominent of sahajiya tendencies, imitation. And Bhaktisiddhanta considered to even read those books. We're going to tell you what those books were. We're going to show some pictures of the contemporary publications of those books, which are out there for anybody and everybody to read. But he considered that to read those literatures was to make an active interference in the Leela that is being described. Now, what that meant to me is that those words and the eternal Leela, they are non-different. And just to read these things by the unqualified, what to speak of read them out in public, is to actually make an interference. Well, that interference will be, as we learned from Srila Sridhara Maharaj, will be blocked. The person, if you've ever played American football, somebody runs interference, well, he gets knocked out of the picture completely and sidelined completely. And Sridhara Maharaj said, and that will be noted by the higher authorities, and you will be blocked. But in your little prison cell, you still may have your copy, and you may think that, yes, I'm reading Ujjvala-nilamani, I'm reading Govinda-lilamrita, I'm reading Gita Govinda, etc. And the answer is, no, you're not actually, because it is out of your league. All right, Gary, so what are these list of books? And then read them, and I'll put some pictures up there on the screen.
Sure.
And some quotes. Let's go back all the way to, let's start with Bhakti-siddhanta, and then if we have any quotes from Bhaktivinoda, and then forward Prabhupada and Srila Maharaj.
Mm-hmm. Well, Srila Sridhara Maharaj actually gives the list here that Bhakti-siddhanta said.
All right.
So he gives a bit of a background first. He says, sitting between Radhakund and Shyamakund, he, meaning Bhakti-siddhanta, explained not Bhagavatam, but Upadeshamrita. Upadeshamrita contains the substance of Mahaprabhu's teaching in the language of Rupa Goswami. He said, he explained these topics and not anything of Govinda Lilamrita or Vishnu Chakravarti's Krishna Bhavanamrita. The higher topics of Madhurya Leela, Radha Krishna's amorous pastimes, were left aside. Our master did not allow us to read the books where the highest Leelas are described, Govinda Lilamrita, Stavakusha Manjali, Ujjvala-nilamani. He did not allow us to study and to discuss them. Rather, he would become very much disturbed if he heard that someone was interfering with the higher Leelas in those books. He did not like it.
Interfering. Interfering. What does that mean? It's like, he also said, these high topics, they don't look good in your small mouth.
Right.
Yet people who are not even to the stage of, I recently saw where, I wasn't personally there, but a friend of mine was there, was invited by an old friend of hers. Dear Lolita went to attend some little program out in Los Angeles a month or so ago, and there was the bhaktas and the first-year devotees, and the person running the program had them singing songs from Gita Govinda, Govinda Lilamrita, I forget what she said.
Gita Govinda.
From Gita Govinda. Singing songs from Gita Govinda. People who haven't even taken Harinam initiation yet. What to speak of surpass the stage of Anartha Nivritti or anything. Just, and they were described as her so-and-so's Sankirtan girls, you see. So, and this is all because of bastardizing the Sampradaya. That's an old friend of mine coined that term. They have bastardized Prabhupada from the Sampradaya. They have cut him off. Yes, the pictures remain, but the instruction given by our previous acharyas, our Param Guru. I mean, the second generation devotees in ISKCON today would never think of not listening to Srila Prabhupada. So why is it that Prabhupada disciples think they don't have to listen to Bhakti-siddhanta? How is it that is the mentality? It's just a picture. That's all he is. But if you listen to Bhakti-siddhanta, then you'll find out a lot of the do's and don'ts and whatnot. So, Gary, what was, as you say, let me see, what was, name one of those books again?
Govinda Lilamrita.
Okay, let me put that one on the screen here so people can see. Where is that? Govinda Lilamrita. There it is. All right. So this is a modern edition of the Govinda Lilamrita. And
talking about this. Srila Sridhara Maharaj was saying that Govinda Lilamrita is there with Ashtakalya Leela, the eightfold Leela of Radha Govinda. This is for the higher students, he says. Then a devotee says, but in Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda also mentions the Ashtakalya Leela. But Srila Sridhara Maharaj says, yes, but he has given everything in Jaiva Dharma with much caution.
Much caution and not going into much detail. Whoops, sorry. Got the wrong one there. What's going on here? There it is. Also, there are some very intimate pastimes of Radha Govinda, etc., in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Right.
But it should be noted, Srila Sridhara Maharaj mentioned that even those pastimes were, those portions of the Chaitanya Charitamrita were not open for discussion.
It was Parayana, just simply reading through that and no stopping and discussing it.
No stopping and discussing. Not open for discussion. It's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita and can be read, but not open for discussion. So what the quote you just read, these books are meant for the higher devotees. So also the question, it's been asked before, well, if we're not supposed to read these books, who were they written for? Well, number one, as you just stated in that quote, they are written for the devotee, the higher students, the advanced students, not for the beginning class. Now, when will we consider ourselves advanced enough to read these books? Well, I guess that's left to the individual, but I've certainly seen people reading these books, reading them, sannyasi, reading them this year and getting married next year. So, yeah, right. They're getting into the Leela. All right, so I gave this example once. I said, well, you know who they were written for? Rupa Goswami wrote those, some of these books, or Kaviraj Goswami, or whoever the author was. They're primarily written for the personalities that they're written about. Try to follow me on this. Let me give you an example. There's a king, and he has his queens, his concubines, his paramours. He has his court. He's a king. And he's an expert lover, you see. He's expert in the art of love. So you're one of the courtiers, or whatever they were called, one of the scribes in the court. So you write a poem about his expertise in love affairs. Now, you could write such a poem in a general way and not reveal any of the details. And you could also write that same poem in a more detailed way. Now, if you take that poem which is a more detailed way, that's Govinda Lilamrita and Gita Govinda. Very much intimate detail about the love affairs of Radha and Krishna. And you turn around and go out on the veranda and read that to the public in the streets. The king will have your head on a spear.
Right.
But people think, oh, we can print this. I've seen this Gita Govinda being sold in New York to just people on the street. Sorry, that wasn't New York. It was
Bangalore.
Delhi. It was Delhi.
Bangalore.
Huh?
Yeah. I seen in Bangalore also.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's sorry. My memory these days. It was actually in Bangalore. Selling this to IT students, they're reading it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's totally ridiculous that this goes on.
Well, one of the arguments that they always use, all these translators, every translator of these books has the same argument. Well, the Sahajas have presented these things in English now. We have to give a bona fide version so that if people are going to read this, at least they'll read the bona fide version.
Now you really think you're more intelligent in Bhakti-siddhanta than Sridhara Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. You're thinking that you've come along, finally drug yourself out of drug addiction as a hippie in the 60s, joined the Hare Krishna movement in the West, didn't learn Bengali, didn't learn Sanskrit, and here you are a few years later, and your record is, well, I hate to say it, it's not such a shining record. You were a Ritvik for some time, you were this, you were that. You're all over the place. You were blooped out for 20 years doing nada. And now you're back and you're reading Gita Govinda and all these things and distributing these things to the public. This is it's par for the course.
Yeah,
it's par for the course. So that argument, you're actually saying, well, as if the same thing wasn't true 50 years ago or 100 years ago in the time of Bhaktivinoda, the time of Bhakti-siddhanta. The Sahajas were doing these things. And to say, well, we put a bona fide edition out there, for who? That's not going to change anything. You're just adding fuel to the fire, you see?
Right.
So that argument's been around since forever, it seems.
Since the printing press.
It's the printing press. But it's never been accepted by our acharyas. It wasn't accepted by Bhaktivinoda, Bhakti-siddhanta, and any of Bhakti-siddhanta's bona fide disciples. They, but here come the Westerners. Now we know what.
We were far more qualified than they were back in the 1930s, right?
Or they were very Victorian,
Yeah.
Victorian, Only I wish the world was more Victorian. Jeez. All right, so what were the two we mentioned? There was
Gita Govinda Lilamrita and Gita Govinda we mentioned.
All right, another one is the Ujjvala-nilamani, okay?
Yes.
This is another contemporary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Or no, it's commentaries by Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath.
Yeah, written by Rupa Goswami.
Written by Rupa Goswami.
Yeah.
All right. So someone may say, well, Jiva's made a commentary on it. So is Vishwanath. Yes, and when you get into their league in qualification, well, then that might be another story. But as far as your bhaktas, and when do you think they got into this league? First year, second year, 10th year, 20th year? It isn't even about a matter of time. It's a matter of qualification. See?
There's a conversation with Prabhupada and a professor, I think, from Stockholm University about Ujjvala-nilamani.
Please.
And Srila Prabhupada himself, he says, the professor asks him, have you translated Ujjvala-nilamani? And Prabhupada's response, he says, no, Ujjvala-nilamani is not for general study. It is for the high advanced devotee.
So Prabhupada said it, Sridhara Maharaj said it, Srila Puri Maharaj said it, Keshav Maharaj said it, everybody said it, Bhakti-siddhanta said it, Bhaktivinoda said it. But we know better, eh? We know better, right? We know. We've been around, we're streetwise, we know better. It's sad to see. It's sad to see. All right, what other ones were mentioned there? I think we...
Krishna Bhavanamrita was there. I think, did we show that?
Krishna Bhavanamrita, which one was that? I don't know if we got a copy of that picture. Oh, there. That one. Krishna Bhavanamrita. Sri Krishna Bhavanamrita. Yeah. Another in print today. Not an Apa-grantha, but a book only for highly advanced devotees. In what? In the Madhurya Ras. Highly advanced. Prabhupada says highly advanced. Advanced. I remember this one incident. It's recorded. It's in the folio, I believe. But someone said, oh, Prabhupada, so many advanced devotees have fallen down. And Prabhupada said, advanced devotees fallen down? No advanced devotees have fallen down. Rupa Goswami, he is advanced devotee. He has not fallen down. Another time, it's out there in the Prabhupada memories. I forget where it was, but there was some ruckus, some noise going on in the temple. And Prabhupada said, what is that noise? And who was in the room with Srila Prabhupada at the time said, oh, it's the devotees, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, devotees? What devotees? I'm the only devotee.
That put us in our place.
Exactly, yeah. Another time, I'm a little more specific on this one. Srila Prabhupada was walking in Juhu, and Giriraj Maharaj is one of my old friends, and very sweet devotee, you would say, Giriraj Maharaj. I think he lives in the United States somewhere these days, but in those days he was the temple president in the Juhu ISKCON temple, and it was a morning walk, and at a point, Giriraj Maharaj says, Prabhupada, sometimes we are in Maya, or it might have been sometimes, Prabhupada, I'm in Maya, you know. And Prabhupada said, what do you mean sometimes? You are always in Maya. And that's true, to the ultimate extent. When will we be out of Maya? No, you will never be out of Maya. It's just a question of shifting the Maya from Mahamaya to Yoga Maya. But everyone is in Maya. Prabhupada also is in Maya, Yoga Maya. Anyway, he said, what do you mean sometimes? But there were incidences. There was once an incident in Vrindavan on the Bhaktivedanta Marg. Sadly, it's no longer Bhaktivedanta Marg, another topic, but the name has been changed. But the road in front of the Krishna Balaram temple was known as Bhaktivedanta Marg. And Prabhupada was walking there, and one of his sannyasi disciples, who was a GBC and whatnot, said, Prabhupada, were any of your God brothers not rascals? Or maybe he phrased it, were all of your God brothers rascals? And Prabhupada stopped and kind of swung his cane out in front of him at stomach level as to stop him, and he stopped. And he said, my Guru Maharaj did not initiate rascals. And then he said, you cannot even think ill of my God brothers. My Guru Maharaj did not initiate rascals, and you cannot even think an ill thought about my God brothers. Too bad that wasn't heeded. Too bad no one paid attention to that. You see.
This point,
but
Guru Maharaj,
the mentality. And when was that? That was, I forget. I think that was as late as 75, 76 even, 75. But you can see that mentality.
Right.
You know, indeed, Srila Prabhupada did have quarrels with some of his God brothers. Not all for ALL, all across the board, but certainly he did. He crossed words and so many things. But it's unfortunate that no one can remember any good thing that he ever said about his God brothers, about the Gaudiya Mutt or anything. It's kind of like we have the disease of like the fly, like the flies. They always want to find some filthy thing to sit on.
Right.
They attach themselves to filthy things. Whereas the bees seek the honey. They bypass the sweet, smelly stools on the side of the road, and they go to the flowers to collect the nectar, the pollen. So devotees heard Srila Prabhupada say things, and during times of quarrel and even fighting with some of his God brothers, and they just stick onto those things, never to be forgotten. Can't seem to forget them, and then actually cultivate them and spread them on to other people, totally ignoring any of the positive. Or sometimes I've even seen it where you bring up some of the positive, and then I say, well, Prabhupada was just being diplomatic.
Ow.
Now he's a politician, diplomatic, duplicit. Now you're saying, oh, Prabhupada's duplicit, you see. So what you're actually saying is actually he hated his God brothers, and when he said he didn't, that was just a political, being diplomatic. Yeah. I mean, it's so sad to see that, and that disease is still being spread. It's still being spread. That's so sad.
Going back to what you were saying before, Guru Maharaj, about these books being for advanced devotees. Because again, there's another argument. There's so many arguments, but one of the general arguments is, well, we've been in devotee for so many years, we can read these books. But Srila Prabhupada addresses this point in a talk of the Chutananda. Chutananda says, some of the devotees, they say that these books are for liberated souls. So they say, well, we are liberated. And Prabhupada says, yes, liberated for going to hell.
Yeah, right. We've been liberated from the sin of killing a Brahmin. Yani kani chapapani Brahma.
Chapapani.
Yeah. That song is sung, devotees ring the bell and go around. But that song is not sung in the Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Yeah.
I mean, that prayer to Tulsi Devi. And that's the one will be freed from the sin of killing a Brahmin. So, yeah, we've been liberated in many ways. But liberation is not the qualification to enter the Leela of Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the qualification. But pure love of God is the qualification. So it's not just liberated from sinful activities, liberated from some previous karmas and all these things. Mm-hmm. Liberation is not the qualification for Leela, for rasa. Mm-hmm. And those who think they have it have the least of it. Those who think they don't have it, two things. They might have it, and if they don't, at least they're on the right path.
Yeah.
So there was a devotee of Srila Prabhupada. He was sitting in front of Srila Sridhara Maharaj, and he said to Srila Sridhara Maharaj, and I'm going to paraphrase because it was a whole conversation. He said, Guru Maharaj, I'm really fallen. Sridhara Maharaj said, that is good. That is good. He said, no, I'm not. I'm really fallen. Not that I just think that way, but I'm really fallen. And I recognize I'm really fallen. Sridhar Maharaj said, yes, that's good. It doesn't matter how you got there to that thinking. But now you're thinking that is good. You're on the right path. Mm-hmm. Like once I was visiting a temple in which was attached to New Vrindavan back in the, when was that? late 70s, maybe 1981 or something like that. And this devotee comes in my room, wants to know if he can talk. His guru was the Acharya at New Vrindavan. And he said, Maharaj, I've fallen down into illicit sex. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, when did that happen? Oh, was that some time ago? He goes, no, about 20 minutes ago.
Oh, God.
And he told me the whole story. I was like, okay, well, let's move on from there, Anyway. Yeah, so, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We did not find these books on the bookshelf of Srila Puri Maharaj. Mm-hmm. The Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj is accepted by many to be a Namacharya, pure Vaishnava, so many things, a great preacher also. And he was engaged in the latter 10 years of his life in nourishing the bhakti of many Westerners, especially many people from Russia and Eastern Europe, from all over the world, you see. And his bookshelf was extensive. Mm. He never pointed to any of these books saying, you should read this. When you get up there in bhakti, you definitely want to read Ujjvala-nilamani. I don't even think that those books existed on his bookshelf. Mm-hmm. You see? So even if a person reaches that level, let's say, is there a necessity for them to read the book? And the answer is no. If they're in the preaching mission, then the necessity may be follow the rules, follow what the previous acharyas have guided, because as a great man does, others will follow. Mm-hmm. But no, everybody's out to make a name for themselves today, Yeah. There was a time, some years back, we had Rasika acharyas, Paramahansa acharyas, and Rupanuga acharyas. There were three prominent acharyas from India. I knew all three. I'm not going to mention their names. I knew all three of them. Two of them I knew very personally. One of them I knew very, very personally. One was proclaimed by his disciples to have the chair of the Rupanugas, the Rupanuga acharya. The other was a Rasika acharya. And the other one was considered by his followers the only true Paramahansa. They all lived within a stone's throw of each other in Vrindavan. If you went up on any of their roofs, you could see the other guy's temple. They were all much older than any of us by at least 20 years. And they were all three Rasik. One was Rupanugacharya, one was a Rasikacharya, the other was the only, Paramahansa. And they hated each other's guts. I saw this. I sat with one would criticize the other two. I sat with another one and criticized the other. They all hated each other to the nth degree and would badmouth each other to the nth degree. But their disciples would take those words just like nectar flowing out of a lotus flower or something. So, but by that time I'd been around a bit and I wasn't taking the bait. So I actually said one day, I said, when you guys grow up, give me a call. In the meantime, I'm not interested in your antics, you see. Mm-hmm. By the grace of God, I can follow Srila Prabhupada, Srila Sridhara Maharaj, Srila Puri Maharaj with absolute confidence that nothing given to me is going to interfere with my development. Any lack of progress I have, that's my fault. It's not because I've been given something that's going to be detrimental to my advancement. So any lagging is of my own. Any lack of advancement, that is my fault. That is not the fault of my teachers, of my gurus, you see. But nowadays you have gurus translating these literatures, feeding them to their neophyte disciples, translating them and just putting them out in the Hare Krishna world to be read by everybody for sale in ISKCON bookstores and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So personally, I don't accept any of that. So we're not mentioning names here. We're just showing some books. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to watch this video and go back and list those books and save yourself the trouble, there are Apa-granthas. They're totally false. They're not written by anybody reputable. They are nonsense. They are meant to be poisonous pills consumed by Gaudiyas, and then the effect is the annihilation of our parampara. And then there are other books. They're highly qualified. They are written by highly qualified people, and they are only to be read by highly qualified devotees. So a word of caution to everybody and anybody who happens to be listening to this. Don't consider yourself an advanced devotee and go running ahead thinking that you are going to benefit from these higher books. You may be actually committing a great offense. In fact, you will be committing a great offense, and this will stand against you. And I'm just paraphrasing there the words of Srila Sridhara Maharaj.
There was one quote I wanted to read out, Guru Maharaj. It's from a conversation with Srila Puri Maharaj. Mm-hmm. He was I think maybe you were there, I'm not too sure. Mm-hmm. It was a room conversation from February 1996. He said, "In your foreign countries, a party of Sahajiyas has appeared. Mm-hmm. And it is not a matter of inventing something. What they speak is there in 10th canto, in the works of the Goswamis, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But the very fact that they're speaking such higher topics to unprepared audiences, ignoring the glories of the holy name, who is the only real path to this higher Leela, is Namapurad. Mahaprabhu never did like this. He was relishing these topics with a few of his Antaranga Bhaktas. And he was inspiring the masses to perform Nam Sankirtan, and himself performed Sankirtan with great numbers of devotees. Prachar, preaching, should be Nam Prachar."
Yes, Prachar, preaching doesn't mean to preach 10th canto. That is not preaching. Preaching means Bhagavad Gita, actually, and a couple of select Upanishads. That's preaching. Even Bhagavatam is like so hard to, let me tell you, I want to refer to this if you remind me, I'll forget in a minute. But yes, I was there on that day, and it was either on another day in that same time period, we were sitting next to Srila Puri Maharaj's bed, and he was just sitting very silently. And there were like 3 or 4 sannyasis there, and 3 or 4 other devotees, not many, a little more than a half a dozen people in the room. And Srila Puri Maharaj was sitting there with his beads, chanting. We're all chanting on the beads very, very softly. He stopped chanting. He turned, he looked at the 3 sannyasis, or 4 sannyasis that were sitting there, and he raised his bead bag, kind of, like this, with his finger out the bead bag. And he said, a wave of Sahajiyism is coming to the Western world, and it is your duty as sannyasis to preach against this Sahajiyism. Now, I know personally exactly then, and he said a group. I know exactly who that group is. We're not going to mention names here. And he said what they are saying is true, but they're pouring it into the ears of the unqualified, and this makes nam aparad. This is an offense to the holy name. And then on the second day, he said it is your duty to preach against these things, you see. But over the years, I've been criticized by some of those who don't like this type of preaching that calls a spade, so to speak. I've been given the nickname Controversy Swami, although Chaitanya Charitamrita says controversies will strengthen your faith. One should not avoid them. The truth wants to be heard, the truth wants to be known, and the truth wants to fight with ignorance, you see. So, but anyway, there are some people who don't like controversy. But there again, Srila Puri Maharaj is giving us a direct instruction. And for following that instruction, then we are sometimes criticized. Similarly, there's what is called Guru Manubhishta Giri, what is it?
Guru Manubhishta Seva.
Manubhishta Seva means to defend your guru. Something is said contrary to your guru, about your guru or about your guru's teaching, and it is the disciple's duty to defend that and set the record straight, to stand up for what his guru has taught, not to cower down and surrender and to be intimidated by something which is against the teaching of your guru, but to stand up for that. Now, standing up for that doesn't mean you have to offend people, start name calling. Again, let me mention, we're not mentioning any names here. We're describing the elephant, but we're not calling it an elephant. So you can understand what's what, or you can't, but we're not putting names out here. But we've been criticized for defending our guru, and said, while others, they can do that. And why they can do that? Because they're older, they were gray, and they were Indian, and that gave them the right, you see. But this is all like give a dog a bad name and then shoot him, You control the microphone and don't let anybody else speak. This is nonsense. So we have our instruction from Srila Puri Maharaj, from Srila Sridhara Maharaj, from Srila Prabhupada, and we're not going to be backed down by these, intimidations and all of these things. So one day, in that same time period, was being discussed how many sannyasis in these Sahajiya groups that are now in the West and had went to the West. By the way, to put this in a time frame, we're around 1997, 96, 97, like that. And so it was discussed that there are sannyasis, many sannyasis are giving classes from Gita Govinda, Govinda-lilamrita, etc. And Srila Puri Maharaj said that these sannyasis who are way ahead of themselves here in presenting these higher topics of Madhurya Ras to the public and themselves engaging in those topics, he says, in their next life, they will not receive the transcendental form of a gopi in Goloka. They will be born again in this material world in the form of a mundane woman. They will take not a birth in Goloka as a gopi, but they will be born in this world as women. And we're like, whoa. And then one devotee, a Bengali disciple of Srila Srila Puri Maharaj, he said, oh, Guru Maharaj, then that maybe explains why there are so many sincere Vaishnavis in the world today. Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. So stick to the class in which you are qualified. Mm-hmm. When you try to go ahead of yourself, you do no good to yourself, you do harm to yourself, and when you share that with others, you do no good to them either. You do harm to them, you see. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, nobody cares. Everybody's doing their own thing. I noticed once that we're going to read this poem, not today, but on another topic, that Prabhupada wrote, a very critical poem that he wrote, aimed directly at the overall group of his godbrothers and how they neglected the order of Bhakti-siddhanta. So now many, many decades have passed, and I had some experience, not as much as others, but I had some significant experience with the Gaudiya Mutt and those fractions that came out of Gaudiya Mutt that were not Gaudiya Mutt. For example, Srila Sridhara Maharaj was not Gaudiya Mutt. He said, I am not Gaudiya Mutt. We are not Gaudiya Mutt. Prabhupada was not Gaudiya Mutt, but many other fractions remained and kept the title Gaudiya Mutt, like Gopinath Gaudiya Mutt, etc. So anyway, oh gosh, now what did I do? I just spaced it out. I forgot what I was saying there.
You were mentioning about, I forgot. Kali Yuga.
Kali Yuga, right. All right, so, it was on that, what was that? Hang on a second, maybe I'll remember this. Nope, I forgot. Okay, it's for another time. Oh, yes, this is what it was. Okay, so I saw that Srila Prabhupada, okay, I can say like this. Definitely the focus on preaching, particularly international preaching, after the time of Bhakti-siddhanta, it dropped way, way off. And in this poem that Srila Prabhupada writes, he criticizes that. Now, I noticed, and you can say, all right, it's a fact. The Gaudiya Mutt dropped way, way off on the preaching. But there was only one person who deviated from the philosophy, the Siddhanta, taught by Bhakti-siddhanta. And Prabhupada mentions him in this poem also, and that was Ananta Vasudeva, and of course those around this Ananta Vasudeva. Prabhupada calls him out by name in this poem, names him by name as being a deviant, as throwing away the chalice of the nectar which was given to him, by quoting Puna Musika Bhava, again become a mouse, ensnared by the trap of Maya, deluded by Maya. I mean, he names him by name and reads the Riot Act. That was the only person who deviated from the philosophy. Now we have another situation. He criticizes this particular godbrother and the bulk of others, emphasizing this one godbrother, but then kind of painting everybody else in this picture. No, but the practical experience is this. The Gaudiya Mutt slacked off on the preaching, but they did not deviate from the proper Siddhanta. Only one person. Understand that point? They slacked off on the preaching. It could be said. But if you actually look a little closer, you see they preach extensively in India. And they continue to preach extensively in India today, and in other foreign countries in Asia, and even in the Western countries today. Okay, but back in the day, you could say, okay, they slept off in their preaching. But none of them deviated from the philosophy. They all carried the line of Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti-siddhanta in their classes, in their mutts, in training their devotees, etc., from Acharya down to the Bhakti leader or whatever, you see. Now, if you go to the present day, you'll see that everybody's preaching. Every center's doing Harinam. Every center's distributing books. Everywhere you're in or you're out of ISKCON and the Hare Krishna movement, everybody's preaching. But you can hardly find a place that follows the Siddhanta of Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti-siddhanta. The Siddhanta is in shambles everywhere in the world. And that's not just an unwarranted criticism. It's a fact. It is a fact. Starting with the fall of the Jiva Guru Tattva, every Tattva there is in Gaudiya-siddhanta is misrepresented, misunderstood, and improperly taught everywhere. And if there's part of it that's right, it's part of it that's right, not the whole Tattva, the whole Siddhanta. So the preaching is going on, but the Siddhanta is in shambles. Back in the day when Prabhupada wrote that poem, the preaching had fallen off, but the Siddhanta was still maintained. Only one person deviated from the Siddhanta, and that was that Ananta Vasudeva, and of course those who surrounded him and possibly that did follow him. But all the others, whether they were Gaudiya Mutt itself at Yogapeeth, or whether they were the branches of Gaudiya Mutt, Keshav Maharaj and Yajavar Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Goswami and Puri Maharaj and Sridhara Maharaj and all the others, none of them deviated from the Siddhanta, you see. But today it's just the opposite. Preaching is going on everywhere. But the proper Siddhanta is in shambles everywhere.
It's interesting you should say that, Guru Maharaj. Yesterday I found an interesting conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Tushta Krishna. I think you knew Tushta Krishna from Hawaii. Yeah. So this was in a book by Burijan Prabhu. It was his, like a biography sort of thing, his time with Srila Prabhupada. So he was with Srila Prabhupada when Prabhupada said to Tushta Krishna, if you want to start your own spiritual movement, then you have my permission. And Tushta Krishna said, Prabhupada, that's not my desire. Then Prabhupada said, there's no harm. Unless a tree has many branches, it is not beautiful. Then he said, Prabhupada paused then and spoke gravely. He said, but the taste of the fruit must be the same. The branch must bear the same fruit as the branch it has grown from.
And therefore, Prabhupada painted the Gaudiya Mutt logo on the gates of Chandradoya Mandir in Mayapur. To let it be known, this is, we follow the movement of Bhakti-siddhanta. So there you had, for our time and stage, you had the development of the proper understanding. You had a proper presentation of the practice. You had a proper presentation of preaching. All these things were proper. It's a fact that they weren't maybe as fully developed as what they would and should become in the future. And when you went individual to individual, there were many misgivings. There were many misgivings. Someone recently sent an email, not an email, but some one of those message machines or whatever, sent me a message, and it was being forwarded around the internet, and someone was saying that there was one Acharya, and he divided the Gaudiya Mutt and wreaked havoc. And I wrote back and said, yeah, it's a fact. And after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, there were 11 Acharyas, and they divided the movement. They chased people out of the movement, and they created havoc. So, people are still trying to thump on ISKCON. Not thump on ISKCON. They're trying to thump on the Gaudiya Mutt that they had a deviant Acharya who fell down, right, who created havoc, who introduced Sahajiyism. ISKCON has had, dozens. There's hardly anybody left from the original Magnificent 11. There's like 2 or 3 if you want to stretch it. The others all fell down, creating havoc in the process, distorting doctrine. The doctrines that they created still exist today. That has been further followed by others who have created. I know some people that have had 4 different gurus in ISKCON because their guru fell down.
Yeah.
Yet, these same people, they got a baseball bat to beat on the Gaudiya mutt, who had one deviant. One.
People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
And you can't see Maya when you're in Maya.
Mm.
All right, so we shared some information here with our community. I want to note that these videos are mainly for our community, but others are welcome to avail themselves of our videos, but they're primarily for our community, spread through a half a dozen or so countries around the world where I am not able to travel to or whatnot. So we want to share this information with our community, and others from outside our community, if they are interested, well, you can avail yourself of this information. We're not inventing any of this. We are simply giving what our acharyas have given before. Bhaktisiddhanta gives a list of Apa-granthas. Srila Sridhara Maharaj gives a list of books which should not be which should not be read except by the most advanced devotees. Srila Prabhupada has dittoed that. Srila Puri Maharaj has dittoed that. They are all dittoing, following in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. But in the present day, we see that people are all over the place with their footsteps. They're not following. They are thinking themselves over-intelligent or more advanced. Oh, I've been a devotee for 25 or 35 or 40 years. Therefore, this has nothing to do with it, how many years you have been devotee. People have even said, oh, Srila Prabhupada would have been translating Ujjvala-nilamani next. And it's like, I'm sorry. Oh, what's that? Gary, did you get that? Remember I told you look up that conversation in Jagannath Puri?
Yeah, no, he's in Bhubaneswar. It was with a film director. Yeah, I found that conversation.
And the film director came and he asked, you found it?
Yeah. I can put the URL in the Facebook page out so devotees can read that.
Yes, it's a long
I couldn't count how many no's. There were so many no's I lost count.
No. They're asking Prabhupada's blessing to make a film of Krishna Leela. And Prabhupada says, of Gopi Leela, of Rasa Leela. Prabhupada says, no. And they keep begging the question. He keeps saying, no, people will misunderstand. No, this is not. He says no in that 45 minutes more than he ever said the word no in that period of time ever. I mean, it's incredible. And so finally, the film people are beaten down. You'll see in the conversation, and they go, okay, well, Swamiji, can you give blessing? We'll do a film on Yasoda Krishna Leela. Prabhupada says, no, that they will also misunderstand. Right? Mm-hmm. And finally, they're completely exhausted. And Prabhupada said, if you want to do a film, do Bhagavad Gita. This will do good to the people. But he was unrelenting. They're flattering him. No.
Yeah.
No, he would not be party to anything that was a deviation from the teachings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And therefore, when people tried to say to Sridhar Maharaj, but Prabhupada said, we fell from the Leela of Krishna. Sridhar Maharaj said, no, he didn't. He never said that. And they said, but how do you know? You weren't there. And he said, I know he never said that because that is not the teaching of Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta. And he would not deviate from the teaching of his Guru and Param Guru. It's as simple as that. And then he said, you may have misunderstood what he was saying.
Right.
That's not what he was saying. So Srila Puri Maharaj said, Satovriti, follow in the footsteps. Yes, Guru Maharaj, follow in the footsteps. He said, no, follow very closely in the footsteps. That is Satovriti. So thank you all very much for watching. Gary, was there anything else you wanted to mention today?
No, just that we'll add some URLs to some more some articles which have more information, so devotees can avail themselves of those things.
All right. So, Hare Krishna. Until next time, Hari Hari Bol.